Hello everyone. Good day. You're welcome to the Africa Venture Studio webinar on the co-founder algorithm. So we want to see founders here, and if you're in here, just a quick introduction, your name, your startup name, and your location. Let's just see those that are here. Founders who are waiting. Um, can you hear me, Evan?
Yes, I can hear you.
I'm clear, right? Okay. Founders, we are waiting. If you are here, just your name, your location, and what your startup does. Okay, so while we are waiting for you guys, today we are discussing on a very important topic for founders, the co-founder algorithm, how to build the perfect team before the first line of code. With me today, we have Evan Allen. Evan is a co-founder and general partner at the 9.8 Collective, a firm that helps organizations design, launch, and scale venture studios. He's also the director of operations for the Venture Studio Forum, a nonprofit association dedicated to advancing the venture studio model through research, community, and education. Evan has personally been involved in the design, launch, and growth of over a dozen venture studios and was first introduced to the venture studio model when he served as an entrepreneur in residence at Kogo Labs, where he founded, staffed, and led a fintech venture from concept to market in 9 weeks. Good to have you here, Evan.
It's great to be here, Pascal. Thanks for having me. Really appreciate you inviting me to be part of the conversation. And, I want to just start by saying that I was excited about this session, in part because of the topic you chose. You hear a lot of people talk about the idea and fundraising when you talk about startups, but I think a lot of people fail to talk about how important co-founder dynamics is in building the right team around the ventures. You'll hear investors talk about it, but when you're on the builder and the operator side, I think people kind of take the team for granted. It kind of happens or it doesn't. Um, so how you choose your team, how you guys align, and how you design
Okay,
for
can you
hard
hear me?
times. Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Oh, sorry. Let me quickly refresh. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, this is perfect. Sorry. So you were talking about your expectations about today's session.
Yeah, I think it's a really great topic. I think it's one that's often overlooked. You'll hear investors talk about, investing in the right team. But when you're on our side, the builder side, the operator side, I think people miss how important it is to build the right team and that there is a way to do it. There is a process. There are things to look for. It's not just luck or happenstance that, you happen to know the right person for your startup. So would love to get into this topic and hopefully give everyone here some tips and tricks that they can deploy into their own startups as they look for their co-founders.
Okay, so thank you very much, Ivan. Just to give a little bit of insight, for how long have you been working with venture studios and founders?
Yeah, so I joined my first venture studio about 5 years ago. So I've been, fully immersed in the venture studio space for going on 5 years now. I started working with founders in 2019, so 7 years ago. So I've been in the entrepreneurial space, in the founder space, uh, a good bit longer than I've been in the venture studio space. And that experience is actually what led me to join a venture studio. Building startups is really, really hard. It doesn't
Mhm.
mean they're easy inside of studios, but studios do give the entrepreneur a bunch of help and advantage that I was really looking for kind of early in my career as a builder.
Okay, so moving into to the discussion for today, what do you think is one mistake startup founders make? Why choosing co-founders?
Yeah, I think oftentimes you'll see startup founders pick their founder uh, first rather than thinking about the roles that they need covered. So every startup in the early stages needs someone who's their builder, who's going to write the code, who's going to build the product. If you're selling something, you have to build it and make it real. Someone has to be in charge of selling. Of course, the whole point of a startup is to provide a service in exchange for money. If someone's not selling, you're typically going to fall behind, and then you need your strategist, right? Who's going to understand what this business needs to look like in 5 years, in 3 years, in 1 year, and in 1 month. And those three roles have to be covered.
Mhm.
And if you doesn't, that's not to say you have to have three people, of course. Multiple people or one person can cover multiple roles. But if those aren't covered, something isn't going to work, right? These products don't sell themselves. They definitely don't build themselves. And if you start out building without any long-term vision, building and selling without any long-term vision in mind, you're going to get tripped up. So, with that sort of framework in mind, I think one of the early mistakes that startup founders will make is failing to go roll backwards. They'll have a friend or they'll have someone else who's passionate about the project, and maybe they're both builders. And so they get really excited and they're both coding or they're both building their prototype or they're both selling and no one's building yet. So it's really important to understand what the business needs and then find a person to fill that role. Because when you bring in a co-founder, you know, you're essentially getting married to them through a business. You're with that person for the long haul. It's very, very hard to unwind giving someone equity. So when you bring in a co-founder, you have to make sure that your business has what it needs first. So it's a mistake I've been a part of. Candidly, I've seen it happen where a friend recruits a friend and they're going to build it together and they very quickly realized that they actually don't have what it takes to build that specific company.
Hmm. So you mentioned a couple of ideas here. You mentioned the long-term goal. So some founders just join startup just because they are hackers or because they are programmers. They just create something and then they keep going without defining the long-term vision. So I think for founders, long-term vision and the organization goal and making sure that co-founders are aligned, because it's more about the direction. So even if the person is the highest programmer in the whole world, but the person doesn't align with the vision, there is surely going to be a problem along the way. So I like the fact that you mentioned that co-founders need to define their long-term vision from the outset, and then having a mix of skills. So I think I read somewhere it's always good to have from the outset founders having complementary skills. Maybe they're I think I saw someone has to be a hacker, maybe the programmer or the tech guy or the CTO who does all the back end and all. Then you have the hustler who is the salesperson of the or the chief marketing guy who draws the revenue and all of those stuff. Then you should also have the hype man who does the story, the branding, the pitching to investors and all of those things. Then of course you should also have a hybrid guy who maybe has maybe some combination of all of these skills. And we normally see a couple of these guys in Africa. Yeah, you see the maybe the CEO who also does the pitching, and maybe he's also the programmer, or maybe he does the sale and all. But in terms of choosing between complementary team members over mission aligned team members. When you are picking teams, what is more important in a co founder relationship? Complementary skills versus aligned core values. Which do
Yeah,
you think is more important?
values. I think it's always the aligned core values. Skills are replaceable. Some people are very, very talented, but if they're not mission aligned, it's not going to work for very long. And that's a thing that I think people fail to realize. You might have the most talented programmer in the world, but if they have different needs in their personal lives, if they want to get something different out of the business, the strategy is going to quickly diverge, and you're going to have more conflict than needed. And even if that is not the reason that conflict arises, there will be conflict that arises naturally through the course of building a business. Building a startup is really, really hard, and that in and of itself is going to produce some hard times for the founders. And so if someone's in it just to collect a paycheck or something like that, and doesn't really believe in the mission or doesn't really believe in the problem that the business is solving, it's pretty easy for them to lose momentum and lose steam and want to go find a different job or do something else. So you really want to make sure that the team is both aligned with themselves and in the mission and why they're solving the problem and why it matters. So that is a really important thing to be aligned on. Then you want to be aligned on your goals for the business, and how that fits into your own lives. It takes a lot of time to build a startup, and so the co-founders, and I've done this with my co-founders. We'll sometimes even start by explaining what we want our lives to look like in 5 years, the things we want to be true, the things we definitely don't want to be true. And if you can't accomplish that and build a business, your team's not aligned, or if your business won't allow you to accomplish some of those things that matter to you personally, um, you're going to run into kind of values-based conflict, and that's the stuff that's really, really hard to work around. It's not to say that programmers aren't talented, but you can probably find someone else who can write code. You can probably find someone else to manage your sales process. You probably can't build a business for 5 years with someone who wants something completely different for themselves out of the business, or sees the business in a very different light.
I like the fact that you kept mentioning the fact that building a startup is very, very hard, because founders see all the glory, all the mentions on media, the PR, the fundraising, and most people think it's about the fundraising or the fine parts, without knowing that a lot of hard work go on back end. And then you mentioned the fact of completing values or interests. Maybe if a co-founder has a different interest that he or she wants to accomplish through the business, it's best that allow their interest infuse it into the business. So I think building a mission aligned team, it's very important. Skills or complementary skills can always be replaced if that becomes a situation along the line. So let's move to the next question. So if you have two co-founders who are both strong in one area, so let's say two sales leaders, what is the immediate risk, and how do you think the early team structure, the early team should structure their roles to mitigate this?
Yeah. So starting with two sellers, this kind of goes back to one of the things I said is you want people selling, you need people building, and you need people with your eyes on the strategy. So if you have two sellers, that means you don't have people building, or you don't have people with their eyes on the strategy, or both. And if you don't have anyone on that founding team who's leading the product and the vision for the product,
Mm-hmm.
then you find yourself selling uh, without really any attachment to product truth, and so that can pull you in a couple different ways. If you know you're selling something, but the market wants it slightly different, and you
Mm-hmm.
promise something slightly different to person A, and something slightly different to person B, and something slightly different to person C, you probably can't combine all those variations into one cohesive product. And
Mm-hmm.
so you kind of become pulled around by the market, which in a way I do, by the way, I do think you should be selling to hear what the market wants. But if it's not tied to any product truth, because your engineering team knows what's built, knows what should be built, or you don't have that strategist defining the long-term vision for the company and understanding which of these different variants is part of that critical path and part of that product roadmap, you kind of just get pulled around and you sell a bunch of customized sort of one-off product offerings, and then you don't really have a business that scales. So it's really important that these sellers are grounded in the core truth and the core mission of their product and their
Mm-hmm.
company strategy.
Okay. Um, what do you also think is one non-negotiable non-negotiable trait or a character that has to be in every co-founding team?
Uh, Grit, being resilient. This is going to go back to what I continue to say, but building a startup is hard. If it were
Mm-hmm.
easy, everyone would do it, or if it were easy, everyone who tried it would succeed. And so this, it's that grit, it's the resilience, it's the ability to move forward when things get hard. In fact, like default to forward progress when things get hard. And I used this example a few times, but I had a friend about a year ago ask me if they should start a business, and they asked essentially like, "How hard is it? Can you like tell me what it's like to build a business and leave my job?" Uh, and I was like, "Great. Who keeps the books for your company? Who's your accountant?" "I don't know. We have hundreds of employees." It's like, okay. What happens when your laptop breaks? Well, I send it to IT, and IT fixes it. And I was like, yeah, when you're building a startup, you're responsible for all of that. You probably don't have an accountant. You don't have to be an accountant, but you have to keep track of your books. Are we making money? What are we spending money on? And
Mm-hmm.
then, if your laptop breaks, this happened to me in the early days of 9.8. My laptop broke. I worked from my phone for 3 days until I could go get it out of the shop. You're not in this sort of normal job setting where if something breaks, it's not really your responsibility. Everything is your responsibility. Making sure your filings with the local government to remain in good status and the ability to operate, it's all your responsibility. um, and that's on top of building a product, selling a product, and maintaining the strategy and vision. So when you play it out, there's a lot going on at any given time. And if you don't
Mm-hmm.
believe in that mission, and you don't have that sort of resilience to keep pushing on when those things get hard, uh,
Mm-hmm.
it's very easy to fail. Um, if your day gets really full dealing with a whole bunch of different fires and troubles that pop up that were outside of building and selling, you still got to make time for building and selling, or there's not really going to be a lot of momentum. So definitely have to be gritty and tough.
Hmm. Thank you very much for that, Evan. So, for a co-founding team, of course, founders have to be ready for a lot of challenges that will come up along the way. In fact, building a startup is like solving one challenge after the other. Your laptop breaking up, customers complaints, and all of those things. Like it's a whole lot. So founders have to be ready. So founders, while we are going on with the session, if you have any questions for myself or Evan, you can drop the question in the comment part section of this conversation, or if you're in the community, you can drop your question in the community. So the next question, Evan, is this relates to structuring equity, roles, and decision making. How do you think founders' equity should be sorted out at the beginning of a startup? Should it just be split, let's say 50-50, or based on vesting or rules, or it should be earned or assumed? What's your opinion about splitting equity when building a startup?
Yeah, it's a really tricky topic, because so many people join the startup for the equity, right? It's in fact, I think, this is another thing that founders miss on. Equity is not free compensation. I think you'll see a lot of founders who are like, oh, well, I don't have a bunch of cash in my bank account, but I can give you equity. Well, if things go right, the equity is actually far, far more valuable for the business than just the cash. Um, and so it's really important for the business to have the equity structured and the cap table structured efficiently long term. So within that, there's a few things that matter within a cap table, and this is sort of how we help founders through the studio lens think about this. Um, First things first, don't ever go 50-50. Because the equity is oftentimes tied to voting rights. Um, Someone has to be the tiebreaker. If it's you and one other partner and you are split 50-50 and you get into a disagreement, who decides? So 50.1% and 49.9% is much more viable than a true 50-50. When you think about the cap table and what it signals to investors, it is, again, it's a very valuable form of compensation. It's a very important signal to the role that each person plays. So you want the equity to reflect a person's role in the startup as well. So just because you're both there doesn't mean it's 50-50. It might be 90-10. You might actually choose to leave some shares unissued to bring in another co-founder that you need. So you really want to think a few moves ahead in terms of giving out your equity. And then you also asked about vesting. I think vesting is another really important part of issuing equity, especially to anyone who wasn't the day one founder. Of course, the person who owns the business and who starts the business, like their equity is not going to vest. It's their company. But anyone after that, with very few exceptions, should be tied to a vesting schedule. And so the standard practice is a 1 year cliff, which means after nothing vests the first year until all of a sudden you hit this 1 year cliff and a big chunk of it vests. And then typically for 4 years, so the remaining three, the rest of your equity would vest essentially monthly or quarterly. And if you leave before then, you should have terms in your contract that require the employee or the co-founder to forfeit any of their unvested shares because they weren't there long enough to actually earn them. But the reason you put this in place is so that they know what their value is and they know what they're working towards. They know what they're earning by continuing to build. So there's a lot of reasons someone might leave. Like I said, things get hard. There's conflict. People are misaligned in terms of their values. So if you give someone 40% of your business and you realize you don't have the same values, or you need to bring in other people and they're not willing to give their equity up, well, then all of a sudden, someone who's not part of your business owns 40% of your business, and they may or may not have to sell that equity back to you. Um, so you definitely want vesting schedules with forfeiture clauses, and even the automatic repurchase of shares that are vested. That one's a little bit trickier because you can't necessarily force someone to sell you something that's theirs, but you can get pretty close.
Thank you very much for that insight, Evans. So, speaking about the co-founders agreement, what are the top five co-founding agreements you think that is very important that founders should have while starting up?
Excuse me, the five.
Important co-founding agreements, like most important ones you think should be on ground, maybe the
uh,
vesting agreement and all of those ones.
Yeah, so if you're looking at a co-founder agreement, you definitely want a vesting schedule.
Mm-hmm.
You're going to want defined roles and responsibilities. You never want that to be left to the imagination or to some verbal agreement. You want it written down what that person is responsible for, and having that as a part of their agreement is important. Some of the others that I also think are super important would be a company charter and a company mission. You again, it's really important that you see the same vision over the 5-year term, over a 2 or 3 year term, and in the very short term. And that's not something that you want to realize that you had a misunderstanding around later. And so, sitting down with your co-founders and those that you're bringing in equity and talking about the mission and the vision and having it written down so people can refer back to it when things get hard or they're trying to make a decision is also really important. Um, there are a lot of other things that I would say are less important, right? Like those are the big three that I would look for in any agreement. Some of the others, though, just to kind of throw these a few other items out there. Terms for compensation. When do we get paid? Why do I get paid? What is the formula by which my pay is calculated? Is it a salary? If you're in a seller role, um, there are things like you might be earning a commission. Well, what does that mean, right? Getting someone to buy the product is important, but getting them to pay for the product is probably more important. So are you owed your commission the second someone signs on the dotted line? But what if they don't pay for 90 days or 180 days? So you'll see a lot of terms around like pay when paid. Um, you earn your commission when the customer pays us. So you can get into a lot of disagreement or frustration, I should say, around when the money is actually owed to someone. So really tight on compensation terms. Um, I'm trying to think of a few others. There's a lot of stuff around like it depends on where you're located, what you might call this, but grounds for severability. So, what are the things that a person cannot do? They're representing your company. So you might have, no-go areas around like public use of drugs and alcohol because that's not a great look for your company. There are lots of moral clauses that you might put in that might automatically trigger someone being separated from the business, and those are probably the top five for me. But again, I think those first three are the ones that are really structural and hard to get around if you get wrong.
Yeah, thank you very much, Evans. Can you hear me, Evans? Can you hear
Pascal,
me?
can you hear me? Yes, I can hear you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, your video looks frozen, but I can hear you. Okay, I think you're back now.
You can hear me now, right?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Hello, Evans. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Are you able to hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you.
Great, great.
Okay. You mentioned something around ground severity. Can you hear me?
It cut out for a minute. You asked, I mentioned something around grounds.
Okay. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay. We have a question from someone in the audience. Are these agreements supposed to be made before the startup resumes work, or will they? Is it possible to create these agreements while they are working? So when do you suggest these agreements should be made?
Yeah, that is a tricky one because you of course don't want to slow down or just stop work for sometimes weeks as it takes to prepare these agreements. So you shouldn't sign these agreements with anyone who you don't already trust implicitly. So my advice is to start to put the agreement in place um, right away, so that you're working towards it together, and that these agreements would be finalized within um, weeks of a person joining your startup. And a good way to do that is often through um, you can form contractor agreements. So someone might not actually be an employee of your company, but you can still start working with them, and you can have a sort of a templated contractor agreement that offers protections for the business in the short term, and some grounds on which you guys will work together as you build the longer term agreement. So having a templated contractor agreement and at least bringing someone on in that capacity where there are mutual protections and some assurances, and again, very clear on what that person's roles and responsibilities are, that can let you get going. Because of course you don't, like I said, you don't want to lose momentum for days or weeks just simply by waiting on agreement negotiations or lawyers to review something or write something. So get something in place, but don't wait. And then very quickly start building towards what your long-term agreement's going to look like, and how the equity is going to flow, and how it's going to vest, and some of the things I mentioned a moment ago.
Okay, thank you very much, Evan. So we are rounding up this session. Let's pick one more question from the startups. Okay, what is the biggest red flags that you see in co-founders interview that tells you instantly that this co-founding team cannot work?
Yeah, ego is a really big one, um, especially ego without any evidence or track record to support it. It's really important that you leave your pride at the door, and that everything within the business is very much merit based and team driven. But if you can tell within a team that someone thinks they're more important or better than someone else, uh, there's usually going to be some friction around that, because that then leads to kind of trivializing or not properly recognizing the effort and the role brought in by the other team. So ego is a really dangerous one. Then there are just a couple others, like if you find that someone is not curious and willing to learn, that's also going to be a problem. Now, someone might be very, very smart, but if they're not willing to update their memory, so to speak, and drive themselves to learn more, and always never take for granted that you can always continue to learn and get better. So, like I said, it's hard. I know I continue to say that.
Okay.
But there's
Thank you
always
very
going to
much,
be.
Evans. So Evans has mentioned. Evans, can
Go
you hear
ahead.
me?
Sorry. Yes, I can hear you.
Sorry, it's like you were still speaking. Do you have anything to add?
Oh no, it's all good. Just willingness to learn is another really important one. You come up across all new problems all the time, and if you're not
Oh,
willing to take the time to understand them and learn how to deal with them the next time, that would be another huge red flag when looking at a founder. But I'm all set now. Sorry about that.
can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Yes. So rounding up. So we are rounding up already. What is your final thoughts? What are your final thoughts? Your our final advice for startup here who are still building their co-founding team?
Yeah. My especially around the concept of how to pick a co-founder, the best piece of advice I can give is write out the job description for your co-founder
Mhm.
and then find the person to match it. And in that job description, cover the roles and responsibilities, what they're going to be expected to do, both in terms of like a physical tasks and job description kind of area, but like commitment to the business. Do you expect them to be working all the time, or do you expect them to not be? But like write out this job description of the traits you're looking for, honesty, integrity, things that matter to you as a business. Clarify the goal for your business. We're building, this startup to accomplish these things on this time horizon. And if you're really, really clear about what the business is doing, what you expect of the person from both the work and like a personal uh, traits and value standpoint, how you're going to compensate them, if you start with that and find a person that fits it, you're going to weed out a lot of the red flags and a lot of the potential areas where you can go wrong right up front. This goes back to what I was saying, and sort of one of the biggest mistakes is that a co-founder knows they have a talented friend who could probably be helpful, and they just reach out and it's like, "Hey, Johnny, can you join my company? Can you help me build this?" And Johnny might say yes, but that might leave you with some misalignment on values or some critical coverage gaps in terms of your company's abilities. So always start with the job description and then find the person to match it.
Okay. Can you hear me, Evan?
Yes.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, I can hear you.
Okay, okay, okay. So founders, if you have more questions for Evans, you can reach out to him on LinkedIn, Evan Allen. If you have more questions concerning this session, you can drop it in the community group or you can reach out to me. So, Evans, thank you very much for creating our time to join this session today. And thank you, everyone, for joining this session. We look forward to the next session in 2 weeks' time, where we'll be treating another topic regarding founders. So, once again, thank you, Evans. I'm looking forward to more collaboration. Thank you and enjoy the rest of the week. Bye bye.
Thank you for having me.